Plato. Now, as far as Plato is concerned, he is the student of Socrates. He says about Socrates that he is the wisest man alive. And as we all know, Socrates was one person who actually developed, for whom a lot of people developed a lot of hostility. And that was primarily because he was deflating the pretensions of those who claimed to be wise. So Socrates is one person who acts as a role model to Plato, we could say. And that's one reason why you find Socrates as a character in almost all of Plato's dialogues and letters. This could again be an important question. He uses Socrates as a vehicle to propagate his own ideas and thoughts. Like, you have these 35 dialogues and 13 letters which belong to the entire canon of Plato's writing. And in all these works, you will find Socrates as the speaker. Now, you will find either Socrates in conversation with a rhapsode or a poet or a layperson or a cave dweller throughout his works. Now, that's another important feature of Plato's writings, because he uses the dialectic method of pursuing truth, wherein it always, the writing is always in the form of dialogue. Socrates is indulging in a dialogue with another person. That's how all these texts are framed. Now, talking about Plato's canon, as I told you, there are 35 dialogues and 13 letters. I'll just mention the most important of his works. The first is Gorgias, Apology, Symposium, and Republic. Now, Republic is one overarching dialogue wherein he talks about a number of different themes, more specifically about an artist, about how you pursue truth, what is truth, and so on and so forth. Yes, now talking about Plato, you have 4 very important things that you will have to remember as far as criticism is concerned. Now, the first thing that we'll be picking up right now is the theory of forms. I'll come to the theory of mimesis and the notion of the 3 beds a little later. Now, talking about the theory of forms, Plato is one person who believed that there are things that exist in a pure realm. Now, he divides all of these forms into 2. He says that there's one realm where things exist in the purest of forms. For example, imagine there is a triangle. Now, the idea of a triangle in geometry is very different from the triangle that we actually see or we perceive. So that is the difference that he makes in terms of the 2 levels in which things exist. One is the realm of pure forms, where everything exists in the form of ideas. The next is the theory, where you have all these objects which you could perceive by way of sense perceptions. You can touch, you could feel them. All that forms the other realm as far as the theory of forms is concerned. And then the next important concept is the myth of the cave. Now, I've actually talked about the myth of the cave in one of my YouTube videos also. You could go back and check that particular video. Now, I'll talk about this particular concept in brief, because you also have another video that you could watch. Now, imagine there's a cave, there's fire at one end of the cave, and in front of that, the fire source that is there, you have a parapet wall. And on the parapet wall are 2 to 3 puppets. Now, these puppets are on the parapet wall, and in front of the parapet wall are prisoners. The necks of these prisoners are tied. They can't turn their heads around. They can't move their heads like this. They just fix. They can just see something that's opposite them. So opposite to them is the other end of the cave. So it's just a cave, fire at one end, parapet wall, prisoners, and then again the cave, the end of the cave. Now, what happens is there are people who run over, on the parapet wall. And also you have some figures like dogs, cats, all of them. They're being brought by people, and they just move across the other side on the parapet wall. Now, these prisoners, all that they see is just the shadow of these puppets or these figures on the screen that is opposite them, and they think them to be real objects. Now, only if they turn their heads around will they know that that's not something that's real. So yeah, so the main thing is that the prisoners take all that they see to be reality, but then that's not reality. So that's the same thing that he says about human beings also. So all that which we see, we think it is reality. Now, later on we'll also be talking about Immanuel Kant and Hegel. Now, again, you will find that these 2 people, of the 2 people, Immanuel Kant is one person who says that our knowledge depends on our sense perceptions. Now, only that we perceive is our knowledge, says Kant. So again, you have Plato who says, now human beings are like this. Only that which is visible to them, or only that which they see, they think that to be reality. And the prisoners also represent the physical world as far as the myth or the cave is concerned. Now moving on, you have the notion of the poets. Now, one important point about the myth of the cave is that it is from Republic. The next is the notion of the poets. This is basically a concept that he talks about in Ion, another work of Plato. Now, in this again you find Socrates, who cross-examines a rhapsode. Now, when Socrates cross-examines a rhapsode is basically a person who recites epic poems. So basically, you could think of rhapsode as somebody who's reading a text out to you. So as far as the dialogue goes, now they talk about who a poet is or what is the role of a poet. And Socrates asks the rhapsode about it, and the response is what is of utmost importance, because the muse that inspires the poet is considered to be the magnet. Now there's this magnet, and as we all know, there's magnetic field, and therefore you have a number of rings around a magnet. So this magnet is muse in the sense of poetry. And the first ring is actually the poet. The poet, he gets influenced or attracted by the muse, and then he actually writes poetry. And again, now this is the first ring. When this poem is interpreted by another person, now that person actually becomes the second ring. That is nothing but the rhapsode, who actually recites the poem or who talks about the poem to another person. That is the rhapsode. That's the middle ring or the second ring. And finally, you have the last ring, which is the audience. So again, another important thing is, like we had in the exam last time, that we had this question from this particular concept as to asking if the poet is God, or if he is God's voice, or if he is inspired by God. The answer is actually that he is inspired by God, because we talked about the muse, which forms the magnet, and then you have the first ring, which is the poet, the second ring or the middle ring, the rhapsode, and then finally the audience, the final ring or the last ring. Yes, and he also talks about the existence of, or the notion of, three beds or the theory of mimesis. Now, the theory of mimesis could be better understood if you understand the notion of three beds. Now, all of this which Plato talks about art and reality, the difference between art and reality, how people perceive art, all this is a culmination of what you call as the theory of mimesis, wherein Plato believes that poets are nothing but mere imitators. They just imitate something that they see. They just imitate all that they see, is what Plato says. It's just imitation. There's nothing more to art. So that is the contention of Plato. Now, talking about the theory of mimesis, you will also later on look at M.H. Abrams, who talks about 4 different ages in which literary criticism has actually evolved. And the first is mimetic criticism. Talking about mimetic criticism, it's basically about art as imitation. But later on, we'll also look at Aristotle, how he differed from Plato. Now, Plato basically conceives art as something that is extremely imitative. And that's why you also have the notion of the 3 beds. Now, as far as the notion of the 3 beds is concerned, you will need to know the theory of forms. Now, I'll tell you, I've already told you about the theory of forms. We actually looked at 2 different realms in which objects exist. One, the realm of pure forms. The other, the realm in which these objects actually exist. Now, that is the theory of forms. Now, applying this theory to the notion of the beds. Now, imagine there's this concept of a table which exists in the realm of pure forms. Now, there's this idea of what a table is or what it is supposed to look like. That is actually something that exists in the realm of pure forms. Now, imagine there's a carpenter who actually, he perceives that particular object that exists in the realm of pure forms, and he makes a table out of it. And imagine there's some other poet who comes and he writes another poem about the table that is created by the carpenter after having looked at, or after having perceived, the object in the realm of pure forms. Now, the poet, he looks at the table created by the carpenter, and then he writes a poem or say a novel or anything on that particular object. Now, what Plato says is that, now because objects exist in the realm of pure forms, it is not that The poet directly takes it up and he doesn't create anything new, but he merely imitates everything that the carpenter has done. Now, when the carpenter actually makes the table, it is imitation in the first instance because he is imitating from the idea of an object which exists in the realm of pure form. So that's one imitation. And again, when there's a creation of art in the form of a poem or literature or anything for that matter, a poet is only looking at a table that is already an imitation and then he's going to write his work. So therefore it is double imitation. A poem or a play is actually a result of double imitation, and therefore he says that art is twice removed from reality. Now, once when the carpenter actually created it, it was once removed from reality, and when again another poet comes up with a poem, it's twice removed from reality. Another time it is an imitation. So that is the notion of the three bits. Now, it's important to understand the theory of mimesis and the basic distinction between Aristotle and Plato. Plato thinks that it is imitation and nothing more to it. He also thinks that art is not something that elevates people, it does not moralize things, and he talks about how art is one thing that has actually taught people about how you take another person's wife. He basically thought that art is highly immoral, and also he considered poets to be liars, and that's one reason why he wanted poets to be also banished from the Republic. Now, this is